This is the story of bringing home Bruno. It's a tall tale about how I got my dog. His name is Bruno. He's a very unusual dog. You see, Bruno can talk. And I think you're going to like what Bruno has to say. I remember. Today's the day. I'm really excited today. I said as I jumped out of bed, today's the day that I'm going to get my new best friend. That's right. Today I'm going to the animal shelter and pick out a dog. Now, I know that the animal shelter is the best place to get a dog or cat because they rescue lost animals and animals that haven't been treated the way they should be. First, I'll wash my face and brush my teeth and comb my hair really good because I want to look good for my new pet. I thought to myself as I looked in the mirror, I wonder what kind of dog I'll find at the animal shelter. I hear that they have all kinds, even puppies. I thought to myself, I need to think about a lot of things before I get a dog. Things like, where will he sleep? Where will he go potty? Am I willing to clean up after him? Is my yard big enough for him to play in? Is the fence around the yard strong enough so he can't get out and go onto the street? Can I afford to buy him food? Will I have time to take him for a walk every day for exercise? Because that's very important for dogs. It's a very big responsibility having a dog, that's for sure. Well, there it is, I thought as I approached the street across from the shelter. I can hear the barking of the dogs that are living there. Oh boy, I said to myself. I think I can hear them calling. They're saying, please come and take me home. Even though I'm excited, I must remember to look both ways before crossing the street. Okay, it looks clear now, so I can cross safely. Wow, I see all kinds of dogs. There are big ones and even little tiny puppies. Which shall I choose? I thought. The puppies seem to have a crowd around their cages. Guess they won't have any trouble finding a home. I know. I'll choose an older dog. Maybe he'll already even know some tricks. Just at that moment, I came around the corner of a great big cage, and there he was. The biggest, funniest looking yellow dog I had ever seen. He had big floppy ears, huge brown eyes, and feet the size of a small horse, and a long yellow tail that wagged all around. Hello there, fella, the dog said. How'd you like to take me home? I'm very smart and I have a good sense of humor. I looked at the dog and I couldn't believe my ears. Did you just talk to me? I said in amazement. And the big yellow dog looked at me straight in the eye and he said, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that little detail. Now don't tell anybody or they'll never let me out of this place. I'll end up in an exhibit at a zoo. I said, I can keep a secret. Do you have a name? My name is Bruno. But you can call me anything you want if you'll get me out of here, he replied. Oh no, that's a fine name. I like Bruno, I said. So I filled out the proper paperwork, paid the fees, And off me and my new best friend Bruno went. The nice people in the office even gave me a leash, which I proceeded to put on Bruno around his neck. But Bruno looked at me with his big brown eyes and whispered so nobody else could hear, I don't want to be a complainer. But I really have to wear that? I said, at least until we get home. Then maybe we can take it off. I don't want you getting in any trouble on the way home, and there's a lot of busy streets to cross on the way. Bruno said, okay, if you insist. We walked all along the road and then over the bridge with Bruno leading the way. I said, Bruno, will you slow down? You're tiring me out. This isn't a race, you know. And Bruno turned around and looked at me and said, you should try to keep up. Walking fast is good exercise. As we approached the forest by the lake, we stopped to take in the view. I said, I live way over there on the far side of the lake. How about we take a shortcut through the forest, Bruno suggested. I don't know, that trail's very dark and scary, and I've never been that way before. Bruno pointed his nose in the air and said, now don't you be afraid. I'll sniff out the right way home. Follow me. So off we went into the dark forest. And before I knew it, all the trees looked the same. I couldn't even see the sun because the trees were so tall. And it got darker and darker as we walked down the trail. I was sure glad I had my new best friend to guide me. I wasn't even afraid with my dog Bruno by my side. We had walked for a long time when suddenly Bruno's ears stood up and he sniffed the air with his big black nose. What is it, boy? I said. Bruno looked at me and then looked back at the fir tree in the distance, and there was a strange sound, and then a small tree seemed to wiggle, and that was all it took. Big Bruno lunged in the direction of the wiggling tree, and suddenly the leash slipped out of my hand, and he was gone into the darkness. And all I could hear was the sound of his big paws bounding through the leaves of the dark forest floor. I heard a bark, then a growl, and then the sound of Bruno disappeared into the forest as he moved farther and farther away. Now I was alone in the woods and there was no sign of my new friend Bruno. I called, Bruno, please come back. Bruno, I don't know my way in these woods. But there was no Bruno. I looked around and all I could see was huge towering trees with green clinging moss growing between the limbs. I began to walk in the direction that Bruno had gone, but the forest seemed to get darker and darker, and the wind started to move the trees, and I could hear all kinds of strange whispering, eerie sounds. My heart began to beat harder and harder. I stopped dead in my tracks. I couldn't move anymore. I was so scared. And then I heard it. I heard a thump, 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 thump. It sounded kind of like native drums in the jungle. But it wasn't native drums, and it wasn't the sound of my heart beating. It was something in the trail right behind me. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing would come out. I was so scared my whole body began to tremble. I was afraid to turn around and look. What could it be? And then I heard it. I knew that voice immediately. It was my new best friend Bruno, with his big yellow tail wagging against a hollow tree trunk. Are you okay, boss? You look like you just saw a ghost. I am just fine. I'm lost and cold. How about we go home now? I asked. Bruno looked at me with his big brown eyes and said, sure, but I want to show you something first. Grab my leash. I picked up the leash and wrapped it around my wrist so there was no way he could get away again. And Bruno began to pull me through the woods. We approached a large fallen tree with a small clearing behind it, and Bruno said, quiet now. Don't make a sound. We crawled up behind the tree and peeked through the rough bark on top. Look over there, Bruno whispered. In the clearing, I could just make out the form of a mother deer. She was licking a tiny baby fawn with loving care. Bruno whispered, you don't think I'd just up and run away from you, my new best friend, for no good reason. After all you've done for me, I wouldn't do that. That's why I ran away. The baby fawn had wandered away from her mother, and a hungry coyote was about to make it lunch when I heard the whimper, and I went to help. I chased away that hungry coyote and brought her back to her mommy. Yeah, that's what I did. I said, that's a very good boy, Bruno, as I patted the big yellow dog on the head. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, roof, roof. I looked at him and I said, Bruno, you know what? I think we make a pretty good team. Now, can you please find the way out of this forest? It's got to be way past our dinner time. I'm hungry. Bruno sniffed the air with his nose and looked both ways on the trail and then said, follow me, boss. Well, before I knew it, we were home in front of a blazing fireplace with our tummies all full of a fine dinner. I had a new best friend and a new appreciation for not going into the woods unprepared. Bruno put his big paw on my shoulder and said, thanks for adopting me from the dog shelter, boss. I looked at him and I said, thank you for saving me from being lost in the woods. Bruno opened his mouth and licked me right on the cheek with his big pink tongue. He didn't have to say anything more. I knew I loved my big Bruno, and he loved me. We'd be friends forever. Bruno looked at me and said, ruff, ruff. I can't wait for our next big adventure, boss. I said, me too, Bruno. But I know that we gotta be strong and healthy to have an adventure, so we need to get our rest. It's time to close our eyes and go to sleep. Bruno said as he drifted off to dreamland and started to snore. The end. Arf,